Zuiyu must have left from here. If I chase after him, it will be difficult to come back. Duan Ling Tian looked at the entrance of the stone steps, which was covered by a faint light shield, and his expression was a little grim. The light shield in front of him was formed by a special inscription formation. No matter who passed through it, their aura would be remembered without exception, and they would not be able to pass through it in reverse later. Because this inscription formation was created by a martial emperor, only a martial emperor could forcibly break it. Otherwise, one could only honestly abide by its rules. If Duan Ling Tian were to pass through the light shield formed by this inscription formation and enter the stone steps entrance now, it was uncertain whether he could catch up to Zuiyu. Even if he could, he might not be able to return to the 4th level of the Azure Wind Palace, let alone go to the 5th level of the Azure Wind Palace to find the remains of Martial Emperor Azure Wind and obtain the 3 profundity fragments within them. According to Duan Ling Tian's calculations, the remains of Martial Emperor Azure Wind, barring any accidents, should be on the 5th level of the Azure Wind Palace. If I chase after him, I might not be able to return, nor might I be able to catch up to Zuiyu and kill him. If I don't chase after him, Zuiyu will definitely leave the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure alive. Duan Ling Tian, muttering to himself, looked even grimmer. Once Zuiyu leaves the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, the 3 second-rate forces, Wuchang sect, Qian sect, and Baiming sect, will definitely know that I killed Su Qing, Lei Zhong, and Lei Jun. Su Qing is the top young talent of the current generation in the Baiming sect, and he is also the personal disciple of the Baiming sect leader. Once the Baiming sect learns of my killing him, they will not let me go. As for Lei Zhong and Lei Jun, they are the 2 most outstanding disciples of the current young generation in the Qian sect. Lei Zhong is a personal disciple of a martial emperor expert from the Qian sect, and Lei Jun is a personal disciple of the Baiming sect leader. The Qian sect and I will inevitably be at loggerheads. Wuchang sect, I might not have directly offended. But once the Wuchang sect learns that I am the only one left on the 4th level of the Azure Wind Palace, and might ascend to the 5th level to obtain the 3 profundity fragments from the Martial Emperor Azure Wind's remains, they will also not let me go. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but smile bitterly. The 3 second-rate forces of the northern desert region would undoubtedly target him because of Zuiyu's escape, leaving him vulnerable to attacks from all sides. At that time, he would not only have to face a group of Void Peak experts from the 3 second-rate forces, but also the 3 Martial Emperor experts within them. After all, each of the 3 second-rate forces had at least 1 Martial Emperor expert. For a moment, Duan Ling Tian felt immense pressure. Should I chase him and take a gamble? Perhaps I can catch up to Zuiyu. But if I do that, I might not be able to catch up to him. In that case, not only would I have to give up the 3 profundity fragments from the Martial Emperor Azure Wind's remains, but those 3 second-rate forces would still target me. Thoughts raced through Duan Ling Tian's mind, and finally, he gritted his teeth and made a decisive choice. Forget it. Offending 3 second-rate forces or offending 1 second-rate force makes little difference to me. When soldiers come, block them. When water comes, cover it with earth. Before entering the Azure Wind Palace, he had already admitted to killing Lei Jun, the personal disciple of the Qian sect leader, and then immediately killed Lei Zhong, the top young talent of the current generation in the Qian sect. From that moment on, he had completely offended the Qian sect, unless he could kill all the witnesses at that time. Otherwise, the Qian sect would eventually learn that he had killed the Lei Zhong and Lei Jun brothers. I'm not afraid of the Qian sect. What do I, Duan Ling Tian, have to fear from the Baiming sect and Wuchang sect, who are on par with the Qian sect? Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. Instantly, a powerful confidence emanated from him, an indomitable confidence. Since he had sorted things out, Duan Ling Tian no longer thought about Zuiyu's escape. What about the 3 second-rate forces? I, Duan Ling Tian, am not afraid. Full of confidence, Duan Ling Tian turned around and walked back towards the rugged path. After easily passing through the rugged path, he once again entered the central area of the 4th level of the Azure Wind Palace. In the central area of the 4th level, a corpse lay quietly, It was Su Qing's corpse. Not far from Su Qing's corpse, a green vine extended from the ground, lifting a piece of the floor high up. In another spot where the floor was lifted, a stone platform stood, with a delicate small box on it, which was suspected to contain the golden key. You also saved my life. Duan Ling Tian moved, disappearing from his original spot. When he reappeared, he was in front of the stone platform with the small box, and at the same time, he reached out and picked up the small box. Crack! As Duan Ling Tian opened the small box, a dazzling golden crescent-shaped key appeared before his eyes. This golden key was exactly the same as the silver key and bronze key in his hand, the only difference being the color. The 3 keys are finally complete. With a thought, Duan Ling Tian took out the other 2 keys and stacked the 3 keys together. As the gold, silver, and bronze crescent-shaped keys were combined, Duan Ling Tian clearly sensed the fluctuations of an inscription formation emanating from the 3 keys. These 3 keys also have inscription formations on them. Duan Ling Tian's mouth twitched slightly. When the 3 keys were combined, he discovered that he had combined and activated the inscription formations on the 3 keys. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Immediately after, a series of loud noises came from above Duan Ling Tian's head, attracting his gaze. Looking up, Duan Ling Tian clearly saw. The ceiling above the central area of the 4th level was now slowly moving and opening, creating a door for him to the 5th level of the Azure Wind Palace. Not only that, boom, under Duan Ling Tian's gaze, after the door to the 5th level opened, a huge box fell down and landed heavily not far in front of him. This was an entirely black, seemingly ordinary box, but it gave Duan Ling Tian an extraordinary feeling. This is black steel. When Duan Ling Tian saw the box, his pupils couldn't help but shrink, and he said with a look of horror, "This is too exaggerated, isn't it? The entire box is made of black steel? Extravagant. Too extravagant." Black steel was a refining material that Duan Ling Tian learned about from the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor. If not for the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, he would not have been able to recognize black steel. Black steel, a refining material that could be used to refine quasi-emperor-grade spirit weapons and even emperor-grade spirit weapons, was extremely tough. If a first-grade artificer were to act, it would require a first-grade artifact flame to burn it for a full month before the black steel would show signs of softening. It would take 3 months for black steel to turn into a puddle of liquid. From this, one could see how tough black steel was. Although my current strength is strong, it's almost impossible to damage this black steel. Shaking his head, Duan Ling Tian carefully examined the box in front of him, which was entirely forged from black steel. The box was tightly closed and locked, revealing 3 identical keyholes arranged in a row. These are the keyholes for these 3 keys? Seeing the 3 keyholes on the box, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but look at the 3 keys in his hand, and his breathing quickened for a moment. He could say that he had put in a lot of effort to obtain these 3 keys. Especially on the 4th level of the Azure Wind Palace, he was almost killed by Su Qing and Zhuayu, and he could say that he obtained the golden key at the risk of his life. A box that can only be opened by these 3 keys, and it's even extravagantly cast from black steel. I wonder what treasure is inside. With an excited heart, Duan Ling Tian inserted the 3 keys in his hand one by one into the 3 keyholes on the box. Click. A soft click sounded, and under Duan Ling Tian's unblinking gaze, the box opened. Immediately, everything inside was completely exposed to his eyes. Inside the box, a fiery red soft sword, thin as a cicada's wing, lay quietly. Unlike ordinary swords which are 3 feet long, this fiery red soft sword was a full 5 feet long, and faint red light flickered around it. One look and you could tell it was no ordinary item. This sword. With just one glance, Duan Ling Tian discovered that the fiery red soft sword in front of him gave him a familiar feeling. But he could almost certainly say that this was the first time he had seen this sword. Could it be that the reincarnation Martial Emperor is familiar with it, rather than me? With a thought, Duan Ling Tian began to search through the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories. Not long after, he got the answer he wanted. So, this fiery red soft sword was a spirit weapon personally refined by the reincarnation Martial Emperor back then. Like the sword in my hand, it is also a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. After knowing the origin of the fiery red soft sword in front of him, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Young man, congratulations on collecting the 3 keys and obtaining this sharp weapon that this emperor obtained by chance back then. This sharp weapon is even more powerful than a first-grade spirit weapon, and it can increase power by a full 100%. At the same time, the sound-gathering formation inside the box opened, and a voice entered Duan Ling Tian's ears. It was the message from Martial Emperor Azure Wind, and his tone was full of solemnity. From Martial Emperor Azure Wind's tone, it could be heard that he cherished this quasi-emperor grade spirit sword very much. That Martial Emperor Azure Wind, back then, probably never dreamed that many years later, the person who obtained the sword he left behind wouldn't even care for it. Looking at the fiery red soft sword, thin as a cicada's wing, inside the box, Duan Ling Tian sighed. He already had a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. Having one more would not help him in any way. In my eyes right now, this box is more valuable than the sword inside. Ink steel is an essential material for refining quasi-emperor grade spirit weapons and emperor grade spirit weapons, making it extremely precious. Back then, in order to refine quasi-emperor grade spirit weapons and emperor grade spirit weapons, Martial Emperor Samsara went to great lengths to acquire a limited amount of ink steel. The amount of ink steel he obtained was less than 1% of the ink steel in the box before him. This sword, Duan Ling Tian reached out, took the fiery red soft sword, as thin as a cicada's wing, from the box, held it in his hand, and lightly flicked it. Buzz! Immediately, the 5-foot-long fiery red soft sword vibrated, emitting a clear and audible sword cry, pleasing to the ear. After all, it was a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword, so Duan Ling Tian quickly put it away. At the same time, Duan Ling Tian did not forget to put away the box, which was entirely forged from ink steel. For him, this was the real treasure, as it would be needed for refining quasi-emperor grade spirit weapons and emperor grade spirit weapons in the future. Duan Ling Tian was now thinking ahead, preparing for a rainy day. 3 keys to open the door to the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, and to open this box containing a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. Shaking his head, Duan Ling Tian glanced at the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, but in the end, he did not go up directly. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the ground. Cultivate. Heal. This was what Duan Ling Tian needed to do now. In his opinion, the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, barring any accidents, should be where Martial Emperor Azure Wind's remains were located. Based on the layers of trials Martial Emperor Azure Wind had set up on the first 4 floors of the Azure Wind Palace, it was not difficult to guess that the trials on the 5th floor would be even more challenging. Finding Martial Emperor Azure Wind's remains will probably not be a simple task. I'm currently injured, and some of the medicinal power of the purple thorn fruit still hasn't been digested. I should wait until I've finished cultivating and my injuries have healed before attempting the 5th floor. Once Duan Ling Tian made up his mind, he focused on cultivating and healing himself. Time flowed by quietly. He didn't know how long passed, but Duan Ling Tian discovered that the medicinal power of the purple thorn fruit, within the true origin flowing through his meridians, had completely vanished. At this moment, his cultivation had just reached the bottleneck leading to the 6th level of the void prying stage. It's already quite good that it lasted this long. Despite this, the medicinal power of the purple thorn fruit still brought a pleasant surprise to Duan Ling Tian. However, the medicinal power of the purple thorn fruit is gone, but the domineering medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, which accelerates the circulation of my true origin, has not diminished in the slightest. With a single surge, I'll break through the bottleneck and reach the 6th level of the void prying stage. Duan Ling Tian secretly took a deep breath and continued to cultivate. The 9 dragons wore sovereign art, roaming dragon form. Of course, while cultivating to improve his cultivation, Duan Ling Tian did not forget to heal his injuries and comprehend concepts while holding two concept fragments. The wind concept fragment was naturally indispensable. Now, as his wind concept improved, his fire concept would also improve accordingly. Therefore, he would not let go of any opportunity to improve his wind concept. As for the other three concepts, he primarily comprehended the earth concept. The reason for this choice was simple. The earth concept allowed him to communicate with the earth and borrow earth force. If his earth concept encountered a bottleneck, he would comprehend the lightning concept among the remaining two concepts, because the lightning concept was at a higher level than the sword concept, cultivating and comprehending concepts at the same time. Meanwhile, Duan Ling Tian's injuries rapidly recovered under the medicinal power of the rebirth pill, quickly returning to their peak state, as if he had never been injured. At some point, Duan Ling Tian's body, as he sat cross-legged, subtly trembled. Immediately after, he opened his eyes, a sharp glint flashing through them. At the same time, his face was filled with pleasant surprise. 6th level of the void prying stage. I've finally broken through. The medicinal power of the nirvana pill has also returned to my dantian. As he murmured in pleasant surprise, a milky white flame rose from Duan Ling Tian's body, causing the heaven and earth energy above his head to fluctuate. Finally, the fluctuating heaven and earth energy gathered and condensed into a heaven and earth phenomenon, with ancient horned dragon phantoms appearing across the sky, winding down, lifelike. 400 heads. 500 heads. 600 heads. The number of ancient horned dragon phantoms kept increasing until it reached 800 heads, at which point it stopped increasing. The full burst of true origin at the 6th level of the void prying stage was comparable to the strength of 800 ancient horned dragons. And concepts. As Duan Ling Tian's eyes lit up, the earth concept appeared and merged with his true origin, causing the true origin to transform into streams of earthy yellow energy, coiling around his body. As the earth concept appeared, the heaven and earth phenomenon above the void transformed into 900 ancient horned dragon phantoms. It's a pity that due to the rough road affecting the 4th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, I can't borrow earth force here. Otherwise, I could increase my strength by another 50 ancient horned dragons. Duan Ling Tian looked up at the 900 ancient horned dragon phantoms above the void and sighed. Soon, Duan Ling Tian regained his composure. In an instant, the earthy yellow true origin trembled, emitting waves of incomparably sharp aura. It was the sword concept. As the 9th level mid-grade sword concept appeared, the heaven and earth phenomenon in the void changed again, transforming into 1,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Boom, boom, boom. A series of faint rumbling sounds came, followed by streaks of purple lightning flashes coiling around the earthy yellow energy. 1st level high-grade lightning concept. Comparable to the strength of 200 ancient horned dragons. Immediately, the heaven and earth phenomenon in the void changed again, transforming into 1,200 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Next, Duan Ling Tian's purple robes fluttered, and waves of profound azure gale swept up. Immediately, another 400 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared in the void. Whoosh! Accompanying the azure gale were vast flames filling the sky, causing another 400 ancient horned dragon phantoms to appear in the void. These were the 3rd level high-grade wind concept and the 3rd level high-grade fire concept born from it. At this moment, the heaven and earth phenomenon above Duan Ling Tian's had already displayed a total of 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms, a magnificent and awe-inspiring sight. All of this did not end there. As the azure gale merged into the flames surged again, fire fueled by wind. Immediately, another 200 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared, which was the half-fold increase in strength of the fire concept due to the fire fueled by wind technique. 2,200 ancient horned dragon phantoms hovered above Duan Ling Tian's head, causing his eyes to narrow slightly. If I were to use the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword again. With a thought, a sword appeared in Duan Ling Tian's hand. It was the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword he had been using earlier. As Duan Ling Tian's power infused the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword, the heaven and earth energy in the void fluctuated, and 800 ancient, horned dragon phantoms appeared out of thin air. Currently, Duan Ling Tian's cultivation was at the 6th level of the void prying stage, and his full true origin burst contained power comparable to 800 ancient horned dragons. The quasi-emperor grade spirit sword, with a one-fold amplification, was precisely the power of 800 ancient horned dragons. 3,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms gathered above Duan Ling Tian's head, constantly assaulting his vision. A visual feast, nothing more. The sword in my hand contains the power of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. Duan Ling Tian held the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword, gazing at the various concepts intertwined with his true origin on it, his face filled with genuine excitement. If I were to borrow Earth Force again, with my full effort, my total strength would be comparable to 3,050 ancient horned dragons. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian's heart surged with emotion. Whoosh! At some point, Duan Ling Tian stood up, holding his sword, his purple robes fluttering without wind. From within him, a powerful self-confidence emanated. A 9th-level void prying stage martial artist who has comprehended 9th-level void prying concept. Without a spirit weapon, their full power burst is comparable to 2,200 ancient horned dragons. I'm not afraid of such a martial artist if they don't use a spirit weapon, but if they do use a spirit weapon, I'm far from their match, even if they only use a grade 2 spirit weapon. The quasi-emperor grade spirit sword in Duan Ling Tian's hand was undoubtedly of a very high grade, and it could even amplify his power by one-fold. However, Duan Ling Tian's cultivation was only at the 6th level of the void prying stage. A one-fold amplification based on his true origin only amounted to 800 ancient horned dragons worth of power. In contrast, a 9th-level void prying stage martial artist's full true origin burst was comparable to 1,200 ancient horned dragons worth of power. Even if they only used a grade 2 spirit weapon that amplified by 78%, it could still amplify their power by over 930 ancient horned dragons. The amplification power completely crushed Duan Ling Tian's. I never thought that by coming to the 4th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, my strength would be able to achieve such a breakthrough. Originally, my full effort was only comparable to 1,600 ancient horned dragons worth of power. Now, I can exert the power of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. My strength has increased by nearly a fold. Duan Ling Tian's heart was stirred, and he found it difficult to calm down for a long time. After a while, he raised his head and looked towards the door leading to the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace. Now it's time to go up and explore. No matter what trials Martial Emperor Azure Wind has set up there, I will pass them one by one and obtain the 3 profound concept fragments within his remains. Duan Ling Tian's eyes sparkled, and he soared into the air, stepping into the 5th and final floor of the Azure Wind Palace. As Duan Ling Tian entered the Azure Wind Palace, Zuoyu not only left the Azure Wind Palace, but also left the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, returning to the entrance/exit he had experienced when he arrived. Whoosh! After entering his exclusive entrance/exit, Zuoyu re-entered the illusion formation and hurried back along the path he had come. Duan Ling Tian, I'd like to see how you escape the pursuit of our 3 major sects. As he flew, a sinister smile appeared on Zuoyu's face, and a cold glint flickered in his eyes. Emperor Wu's secret treasure, central area. On the 2nd floor of the Azure Wind Palace, 2 figures walked side by side, moving through every corner of the 2nd floor, as if searching for something. There's nothing on this 2nd floor. Is that Emperor Wu expert too stingy? The young man in red frowned and grumbled. Unlike the young man in red, the young man in blue beside him was calm, his eyes cold, as if he hadn't heard the red-clad youth at all. If anyone were here and saw these 2 young men, they would surely be greatly surprised, because these 2 young men looked exactly alike. Their identities were obvious. They were none other than the Nangong brothers of the Five Elements sect, Nangong Chun and Nangong Yi. Whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, two whistling sounds descended from the sky, causing Nangong Yi's expression to change. As for Nangong Chun, he swiftly reached out, grabbing towards the source of the sound. What is it? Nangong Yi, who was a beat slower, couldn't help but look at Nangong Chun curiously. Nangong Chun, who had initially been calm with cold eyes, completely changed his expression, revealing a look of pleasant surprise after opening the hand that had caught the falling objects. Deep in his eyes, a hint of excitement was clearly visible. Profound fragments. Looking at the two fragments in Nangong Chen's hand, Nangong Yi stared blankly for a moment before finally swallowing hard. Of the two fragments in Nangong Chen's hand, one was entwined with purple true energy, and the other was entwined with earthy yellow true energy. Thunder profound fragment. Earth profound fragment. Before the Nangong brothers could recover from their pleasant surprise, a familiar, yet unfamiliar voice clearly entered their ears. Congratulations, lucky young man. Because someone opened the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, but failed to retrieve the 3 profound fragments from my remains in time. Therefore, the inscription formation I left behind activated on its own, drawing out the 2 Emperor tier profound fragments from my body, causing them to appear at a certain activated drop point on the lower 4 floors of the Azure Wind Palace. I have set up dense drop points with inscription formations on the lower 4 floors of the Azure Wind Palace. Wherever someone passes, once the inscription formation is activated, the drop point will activate on its own. The voice that entered the Nangong brothers' ears was not unfamiliar to them. They could tell it was the voice of the Emperor Wu expert who had left behind the Emperor Wu's secret treasure. Even the palace they were currently in was left behind by that Emperor Wu expert. After recovering from the Emperor Wu expert's message, Nangong Chun and Nangong Yi couldn't help but exchange glances, both seeing astonishment in each other's eyes. This works too. All 4 lower floors of the Azure Wind Palace had drop points set up by Emperor Wu Azure Wind with inscription formations, and everyone on the lower 4 floors could activate a drop point. And those 2 Emperor tier profound fragments, through the inscription formation, automatically chose one of the drop points to appear, and now they just happened to appear at the drop point they activated? Our luck is too heaven-defying, isn't it? Nangong Yi recovered, swallowed hard, and spoke with rapid, somewhat difficult breaths. This time, Nangong Chun uncharacteristically nodded in agreement. It's just, why isn't it a water profound fragment? Nangong Yi said, somewhat exasperated. Of the 2 Emperor tier profound fragments, one was an earth profound fragment, and the other was a thunder profound fragment. Neither was useful to him. The earth profound fragment was useful to Nangong Chun. As for the thunder profound fragment, it was destined to be handed over to the sect. I wonder which unlucky soul, after opening the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, didn't retrieve the 3 profound fragments from Emperor Wu Azure Wind's remains in time. Soon, Nangong Yi seemed to realize that the die was cast and couldn't be changed, so he was no longer annoyed. Thinking of the person Emperor Wu Azure Wind had mentioned, he felt a bit schadenfreude. If he hadn't been unlucky, these 2 profound fragments would have been his, not ours. Nangong Chun uncharacteristically spoke such a long sentence. In contrast to the Nangong brothers' excitement, Duan Ling Tian, who had ascended from the 4th floor to the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, was very depressed, extremely depressed, exceptionally depressed. All of this stemmed from Emperor Wu Azure Wind's message just now. Young man, although you have reached the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, because you did not come up promptly after opening the 5th floor. Therefore, the inscription formation I left behind has already drawn the 2 Emperor tier profound fragments from my body to the lower 4 floors of the Azure Wind Palace, to find their new masters. Hearing Emperor Wu Azure Wind's words, Duan Ling Tian was almost angered to the point of spitting blood. He didn't come up promptly after opening the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace? That was only because he was worried that there would be danger on the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, So he planned to ascend to the 5th floor only after his cultivation had broken through and his injuries had healed. If I had known earlier that there was no assessment on this 5th floor, how could I have delayed coming up? Looking at the skeleton covered in a green robe, close at hand, Duan Ling Tian gritted his teeth slightly. Just because he came up a little later, the 2 Emperor Tier profound fragments from Emperor Wu Azure Wind's body were gone, just like that. As soon as he ascended to the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, he discovered that Emperor Wu Azure Wind had not set up any trials on the 5th floor. There was only a skeleton sitting cross-legged not far away, which was Emperor Wu Azure Wind's remains. Although Emperor Wu Azure Wind had died of old age many years ago, his skeleton was perfectly preserved, maintaining the posture of cross-legged cultivation, giving off a sense of ancientness. After taking a deep breath, Duan Ling Tian retrieved the only remaining profound fragment from Emperor Wu Azure Wind's body. Unlike the Emperor Tier profound fragments, the energy shimmering around this profound fragment was not true energy. The profound fragment was held in Duan Ling Tian's hand, and around it, wisps of deep green true wind energy were clearly entwining it, emitting waves of awe-inspiring aura. Touched by these waves of aura, Duan Ling Tian felt a surge of pressure, causing him to involuntarily retreat 2 steps, his face filled with shock. This is an Emperor Tier Wind profound fragment. Taking a deep breath, Duan Ling Tian, who was carefully examining the profound fragment in his hand, began to search through Emperor Wu Reincarnation's memories and quickly found the answer. The profound fragment in his hand was indeed an Emperor Tier Wind profound fragment. Based on Emperor Wu Reincarnation's memories, this profound fragment should be a 2nd-level Emperor Tier Wind profound fragment. After searching Emperor Wu Reincarnation's memories again for a while, Duan Ling Tian got the answer. 2nd-level Emperor Tier Wind profound fragment. Instantly, Duan Ling Tian's breathing became incredibly rapid. With this 2nd-level Emperor Tier Wind profound fragment, it means that as long as I comprehend 9th-level Emperor Tier Wind profoundness in the future, I will be able to comprehend Emperor Tier Wind profoundness in one fell swoop. Duan Ling Tian was extremely excited. Half a day passed before Duan Ling Tian's excitement subsided slightly, but his face was still filled with endless excitement and joy. At this moment, he had completely cast aside the other 2 Emperor Tier profound fragments. In his world, only the 2nd-level Emperor Tier Wind profound fragment remained. Hiss. Taking a deep breath, Duan Ling Tian shakily put this 2nd-level Emperor Tier Wind profound fragment into his spatial ring, and his excited emotions finally completely calmed down. This is the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace. There should be other treasures here, right? Immediately after, Duan Ling Tian began searching the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace, but ultimately found nothing. Other than an Emperor Tier profound fragment, there was nothing else. I was too greedy. An Emperor Tier profound fragment is enough to rival the sum of all other treasures left by Emperor Wu Azure Wind. Thinking of that Emperor Tier profound fragment, Duan Ling Tian smiled. I wonder who obtained those 2 Emperor Tier profound fragments. However, since I've got the Emperor Tier profound fragment, I should leave. With a thought, Duan Ling Tian left the 5th floor of the Azure Wind Palace and returned to the 4th floor. Immediately after, he followed the stone steps that Zhuayu had taken, going all the way down. I wonder if I'll encounter that Zhuayu again. If I do, I will definitely kill him. A chilling killing intent flashed in Duan Ling Tian's eyes. Following the stone steps downwards, Duan Ling Tian quickly reached the 1st floor of the Azure Wind Palace. Before he could even react, he entered the illusion formation again. Under the guidance of Emperor Wu Azure Wind, Duan Ling Tian walked out of the illusion formation and left the Azure Wind Palace. Duan Ling Tian. As soon as he exited the Azure Wind Palace, Duan Ling Tian heard a familiar voice. When he looked up, he realized that Huang Denyo had been waiting outside at some point, and his eyes lit up when he saw him come out. Soon, Duan Ling Tian also noticed. Not far from Huang Denyo, a young man was standing in midair, his face extremely grim. When Huang Denyo greeted him, the young man's body even trembled, as if he were some kind of monstrous beast. He is a Five Elements sect disciple. A moment later, Duan Ling Tian recognized the young man. He seems to be a Fire Peak disciple. Fire Peak was not unfamiliar to him. Hu Fei, whom he had killed shortly after entering the Emperor Wu's secret treasure, was a disciple of the Fire Peak of the Five Elements sect and, moreover, a personal disciple of the Fire Peak master. What is it? Duan Ling Tian looked at Huang Denyo and asked curiously. Duan Ling Tian, how will you thank me this time? Huang Denyo chuckled. Thank you? Thank you for what? Duan Ling Tian was startled by the question and asked in confusion. What if I told you? I found the person who intentionally spread the false news that you obtained profound fragments. Huang Denyo's smile grew even brighter. You found that person? It had to be said that Huang Denyo's words startled Duan Ling Tian. Soon, as if remembering something, Duan Ling Tian's gaze immediately shifted, falling upon the Fire Peak disciple who was standing in midair to the side, his body trembling violently and his face looking grim. It's you? In that instant, Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed with a cold, predatory light. That's right, it's me. After reaching the peak of his fear, the Fire Peak disciple seemed to adopt a dead pig doesn't fear boiling water attitude. He gritted his teeth, looked directly at Duan Ling Tian, and said, steeling himself, I owe senior brother Hu Fei my life. Hu Fei. Duan Ling Tian was momentarily stunned, then enlightened, finally understanding what was happening. It was clear that the Fire Peak disciple in front of him wanted to avenge Hu Fei. But would Hu Fei save someone's life? He found that somewhat incredible. I never thought Hu Fei could make someone owe him their life. Before Duan Ling Tian could say anything, Huang Denyo couldn't help but scoff. Hu Fei, a direct disciple of the Fire Peak master, was also a former trader of the Wood Peak. To get ahead, Hu Fei not only betrayed the Wood Peak, which had nurtured him, but also betrayed his master and savior. He had no reputation within the Five Element sect. Now, hearing that someone like Hu Fei would save a life, anyone would find it surprising. However, neither Duan Ling Tian nor Huang Denyo knew the truth. Back then, Hu Fei saved this Fire Peak disciple's life more for his own benefit than out of pure compassion for the disciple. Just as Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo understood Hu Fei, he was a cold-blooded animal. It was impossible for him to show great mercy or kindness. Everything he did was for himself. Selfishness was his byword. In that case, you can return your life to him. Duan Ling Tian spoke indifferently, then swiftly raised his hand, condensing and shooting out a sword ray. Its speed was so fast that even Huang Denyo couldn't perceive it in the slightest, let alone the Fire Peak disciple. Uft. With a soft sound, a jet of blood spurted from the Fire Peak disciple's throat, splashing into the air and falling like blooming red roses, dazzling and striking. Immediately after, the Fire Peak disciple's corpse fell, splattering into a puddle of flesh. Duan Ling Tian's strike was decisive and merciless. So fast. Huang Denyo's pupils contracted. Everything before his eyes happened in an instant, leaving him no time to react. He only saw Duan Ling Tian raise his hand. The next moment, the Fire Peak disciple was dead. He hadn't been able to clearly see how Duan Ling Tian attacked from beginning to end. It seems Duan Ling Tian had another chance encounter inside. Otherwise, his strength couldn't have improved so much. Thinking this, Huang Denyo looked at Duan Ling Tian with envy. Killing the Fire Peak disciple seemed to Duan Ling Tian like nothing more than an insignificant act. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he looked at Huang Denyo with curiosity. Denyo, how did you find out? Huang Denyo naturally knew what Duan Ling Tian was asking. After a chuckle, he continued, I also met him inside. I happened to hear him spreading rumors, saying you got Emperor tier profound fragments and wanted to harm you. Then, I caught him, and after some coercion, he finally honestly confessed to what he did to harm you earlier. Huang Denyo finished in one breath. Duan Ling Tian understood and looked at Huang Denyo gratefully. No matter what, thank you for this, otherwise, I still wouldn't know who the person hiding in the dark trying to harm me was. Although the conspiracy of the person who spread rumors outside the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure earlier, attempting to harm him, did not succeed, that matter was undoubtedly a knot in his heart. He urgently wanted to know who was secretly harming him. Not finding that person made him feel restless whenever he thought about it. Having someone hiding in the dark trying to harm him, living well in this world, was undoubtedly a huge potential threat to him. It's nothing at all. Besides, you gave me a grade 1 spirit weapon earlier and helped me inside. Consider it me returning the favor. Huang Denyo waved his hand, saying generously. Duan Ling Tian nodded, not dwelling on the topic, but instead asked curiously, Denyo, how long have you been out? About half an hour. Huang Denyo pondered for a moment before replying. Whoosh. Just as Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo were chatting, another figure flew out from inside the palace. It's a disciple of a second-rate force. Duan Ling Tian, should we kill him? So he doesn't talk nonsense after leaving through entrance number 1. Huang Denyo stared at the distant figure, a fierce glint in his eyes. No need. Under the terrified gaze of the impermanent sect disciple in the distance, whose face instantly changed upon hearing Huang Denyo's words, Duan Ling Tian shook his head. When he was brought out by the illusion formation, he had already vaguely realized that Zuoyu had likely already left the Azure Wind Palace, and even the true Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. It wouldn't be long before he could exit through entrance number 1 and tell the Cloud Rising sect about him killing the Lei Zhong and Lei Jun brothers. Not only that, Zuoyu would also tell the North Underworld sect about him killing Su Qing. Additionally, Zuoyu would surely report to his impermanent sect about him possessing Emperor-tier profound fragments and even potentially obtaining the 3 profound fragments from Emperor Azure Wind's remains. By then, he would not only face the Cloud Rising sect and North Underworld sect seeking revenge, but also the impermanent sect, who would want to seize the profound fragments in his possession. The 3 major second-rate forces of the Northern Desert region all targeting him. Just thinking about it sent shivers down Duan Ling Tian's spine. 3 second-rate forces were undoubtedly colossal entities to him in his current state. Seeing that Duan Ling Tian had no intention of attacking him, the impermanent sect disciple breathed a sigh of relief. After giving Duan Ling Tian a grateful look, he flew away. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Following that, people left one after another. Apart from the few remaining disciples of the second-rate forces, the survivors of the third-rate forces also left the Azure Wind Palace one by one. Not long after, a familiar figure appeared before Duan Ling Tian's eyes. Xianbei, looking at the young monk before him, a smile played on Duan Ling Tian's lips, and he proactively greeted him. Duan Ling Tian. Seeing Duan Ling Tian, Xianbei felt a bit awkward. In the past, when he challenged Duan Ling Tian at the Azure Wolf Fort, the person he challenged had, unknowingly, already gained strength far surpassing his own. Now, facing the other party, he had completely lost his temper. I'll be going now. Perhaps Xianbei felt particularly suppressed in front of Duan Ling Tian, so after greeting him, he quickly left. As for any Cloud Sky Temple disciples who might have survived inside the Azure Wind Palace, he completely ignored them. Haha, Duan Ling Tian, that little bald monk is really scared of you. Recalling the scene where Xianbei proactively challenged Duan Ling Tian before entering the palace, Huang Denyo couldn't help but burst into laughter. At that time, Xianbei was full of vigor and confidence. But now, facing Duan Ling Tian, he could only flee in disarray. Compared to Huang Denyo's unrestrained laughter, Duan Ling Tian showed no significant emotional fluctuations. With his strength having improved, his mindset had undergone a tremendous change, and he no longer regarded Xianbei, the young generation disciple of Cloud Sky Temple, as an opponent. With his current strength, there were only a few in Cloud Sky Temple who were qualified to be his opponents. Not long after Xianbei left, Zhang Yin also came out. Upon exiting, Zhang Yin immediately saw Duan Ling Tian. After greeting Duan Ling Tian, he then departed. Zhang Yin. Gazing at Zhang Yan's receding back, Duan Ling Tian's eyes narrowed. He only snapped back to reality when Zhang Yan's figure disappeared from his sight. Zhang Yan, like him, came from the Great Han Dynasty, and even from the same imperial kingdom. When facing Zhang Yan, he felt a sense of closeness. Perhaps it was precisely because Zhang Yin was his fellow countryman. Both coming from the Great Han Dynasty and both becoming the top young generation experts of third-rate forces in the northern desert region was already enough to shock people. What's more, he and Zhang Yin were not only from the Great Han Dynasty, but also from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom under the Black Stone Empire, which was under the Great Han Dynasty. Figures, one after another, swept out from the Azure Wind Palace and departed. Big Brother Zhang. Not long after, a figure swept out from the Azure Wind Palace, catching Duan Ling Tian's eye. It was Zhang Shouyong. Zhang Shouyong's eyes lit up when he saw Duan Ling Tian and Huang Danyou. Half an hour passed after Zhang Shouyong came out. Whoosh. At this moment, a fiery red figure, incredibly familiar to Duan Ling Tian, flew out from within the Azure Wind Palace, reaching his side like a fire sprite. Big Brother Duan. A soft and melodious voice entered Duan Ling Tian's ears. At the same time, the figure, like a fire sprite, stood beside Duan Ling Tian. Her graceful and alluring figure was full of temptation, and her exquisitely beautiful face seemed capable of captivating all beings. Tian Wu. Looking at the woman before him, a gentle smile appeared on Duan Ling Tian's face, his eyes filled with tenderness. Where's Su Li? Why hasn't he come out yet? Seeing that Feng Tian Wu had already emerged, Huang Danyou couldn't help but frown. Let's wait a bit longer, Duan Ling Tian said. However, after waiting for a while longer, until no one else emerged from the Azure Wind Palace, the four of them still hadn't seen Su Li. Su Li didn't run into any trouble, did he? Huang Danyou's face darkened as he murmured. Jinx, maybe Su Li came out even earlier than you, and he left on his own because he wasn't sure if we had already come out. Duan Ling Tian cursed, stating his opinion. Of course, while he said this, he still felt a bit uncertain in his heart. Then let's go out too, Zhang Shouyong suggested. Duan Ling Tian and the other three had no objections. Immediately after, the four of them set off together to leave this central area of the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. As soon as they left the central area, the four of them went their separate ways. They needed to exit through the entrance/exit from which they had entered. Following the memory of the path he had taken from the outer perimeter of the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, Duan Ling Tian found the entrance he had used to enter in a spacious cave. This was also an exit. Whoosh. Without any hesitation, Duan Ling Tian moved, and after passing through the exit, he flew out all the way. In a flash, he found himself back in the boundless grassland of the Illusion Formation. Looking at the endless grassland before him, he felt an immense sense of peace within his heart. With my current speed, getting out, I can save more than half the time compared to when I first came in. Now, Duan Ling Tian, whose strength had greatly improved, was full of confidence. Immediately after, Martial Emperor Qingfeng's voice came from the sound-gathering formation integrated into the Illusion Formation, entering Duan Ling Tian's ears and guiding him in the direction to leave. Otherwise, Duan Ling Tian would definitely get lost. The Illusion Formation was unpredictable. Although he still appeared in a grassland, this grassland had undergone some substantial changes, completely different from the one he had passed through last time. Not only that, now, Duan Ling Tian, who was flying above the grassland, soon discovered another problem. When I came, there were many attack-type inscription formations integrated into the Illusion Formation attacking me, but now, those inscription formations are nowhere to be seen. Duan Ling Tian muttered to himself as he hurried on his way. While Duan Ling Tian and a group of young powerhouses were hurrying through the Illusion Formation. At the border between the central region and the northern region of the northern desert, within a mountain range, it was exceptionally calm. Above a valley within the mountain range, three old men sat cross-legged in the air, engrossed in cultivation, oblivious to everything around them. The three old men sat there cross-legged, as if they had merged with heaven and earth, no longer distinguishable from each other. Whoosh! Suddenly, a faint whistling sound came from below the valley. The not-so-loud whistling sound, upon reaching the ears of the three old men, was like a series of thunderclaps, causing them to open their eyes simultaneously, a sharp glint flashing through their pupils. Immediately after, their gazes fell in unison into the valley, landing on the young man who was emerging from the gray light barrier. Zhuyu, one of the old men, with white hair and white eyebrows, looking somewhat ethereal, couldn't help but frown when he saw the young man emerge. The young man who emerged from the gray light barrier was none other than Zhuyu, the #1 young powerhouse of the Wuchang sect in this generation. Master, after Zhuyu came out, his face was still somewhat unsightly, and upon hearing someone call him, he jolted, hastily looked over, and bowed respectfully. The old man before him was his master, and also the only martial emperor powerhouse of the Wuchang sect, Bai Yuhai. Zhuyu, what's going on? Why are you the first one out? Bai Yuhai asked in a deep voice. In his opinion, those who entered the martial emperor's hidden treasure would only have a greater chance of obtaining the profound fragments that their Wuchang sect needed if they stayed inside longer. And now, his direct disciple was the first one to come out. Haha, old Bai, it seems your direct disciple isn't that great after all. A burly old man not far away laughed and said, Indeed, not that great. Coming out of the martial emperor's hidden treasure so quickly, it's unlikely he obtained any profound fragments. Another gray-robed old man also said indifferently, his gaze towards Bai Yuhai filled with a hint of mockery. Hearing the two old men's sarcastic remarks, Bai Yuhai's face darkened, looking somewhat displeased. For a moment, his gaze towards Zhuyu once again held a hint of displeasure, and at the same time, he asked in a deep voice, Zhuyu, did you obtain any profound fragments? No, Zhuyu, whose face had just shown a strange expression upon hearing the two old men's words, was startled awake by his master's question and quickly replied without hesitation. I knew it. Coming out so quickly, it's impossible to obtain any profound fragments. The gray-robed old man said again, Old Bai, I used to hear you brag about how excellent your direct disciple was, but now it seems he's nothing special. He's probably not even as good as my useless disciple, Lei Zhong. The burly old man said to Bai Yuhai with a smile. Hearing the two old men's successive taunts, Bai Yuhai's face grew even more unsightly, and he glared fiercely at Zhuyu, looking utterly disappointed. Zhuyu, who was glared at by Bai Yuhai, couldn't help but show a bitter smile on his face. But when his gaze fell on the other two old men, a hint of playful amusement couldn't help but flash in his eyes. At the same time, he spoke directly. Seniors, the reason I hurried out so quickly was not for anything else, but to report to you two seniors. When facing the two old men, Zhuyu appeared humble on the surface, but deep in his eyes, there was a hint of amusement. These two old fellows were mocking his master, saying he was useless? He was very curious. What kind of expressions would these two old fellows have when they learned that the most outstanding disciples of their Chu Yun sect and Baiming sect had been killed? Report. Hearing Zhuiyu's words, the two old men couldn't help but be startled. Even Bai Yuhai now looked at Zhuiyu with a puzzled expression, curious about what Zhuiyu was so eager to report to those two old fellows. At the same time, he couldn't help but glare at Zhuiyu again. In his opinion, nothing was more important than profound fragments. Zhuiyu, coming out of the martial emperor's hidden treasure early for the sake of the Chu Yun sect and Baiming sect, was undoubtedly joking with the future of their Wuchang sect. Yes. Facing the two old men who looked puzzled, Zhuiyu responded. Zhuiyu, just say what you have to say. The burly old man snorted. Zhuiyu, you hurried out of the martial emperor's hidden treasure. Could it be that you want to tell us that the disciples of our two sects have obtained profound fragments? The gray-robed old man looked at Zhuiyu and asked indifferently. Haha, that's actually possible. Hearing the gray-robed old man's words, the burly old man burst into laughter again, unable to control himself. Bai Yuhai, standing by the side, looked even more displeased. Seniors, before I report to you, I hope you can be mentally prepared. Zhuiyu maintained his humility, but deep in his eyes, there was a hint of schadenfreude. You two old fellows, let's see how long you can be smug. Mentally prepared? Mentally prepared for obtaining profound fragments? You don't need to worry about that. Zuiyu, I've already prepared myself. The burly old man laughed. He did not notice the schadenfreude deep in Zuiyu's eyes. However, the gray-robed old man did notice this, and his brows furrowed, a premonition of ill omens suddenly rising in his heart, and he asked in a deep voice, "What exactly is it? Seniors, please accept my condolences." Zuiyu did not hesitate and said directly, "Condolences?" As soon as Zuiyu said this, Bai Yuhai, who was standing by, froze. As for the other two old men, their faces changed one after another. "Zuiyu, what do you mean by that?" At this moment, neither the burly old man nor the gray-robed old man had their previous casualness. Their faces were serious, making the surrounding atmosphere become solemn. Senior Tong Shan. Zuiyu first looked at the burly old man, the martial emperor powerhouse of the Chu Yun sect, and slowly began, "Your direct disciple, Lei Zhong." Before Zuiyu could finish, Tong Shan's face had already changed drastically. At the same time, his words were interrupted by a terrifying aura that swept towards him, pressing down on him, causing him to involuntarily retreat a few steps. In an instant, Zuiyu only felt his internal organs tremble, his blood surge, and a sweet taste in his throat. Wah! Zuiyu, his face flushed, was forced to spit out a mouthful of clotted blood by Tong Shan's aura, which belonged to a martial emperor powerhouse. When a martial emperor powerhouse was enraged, their aura alone could make a fourth-level void transformation martial artist vomit blood. The terrifying power of a martial emperor powerhouse was evident. Tong Shan. Seeing Tong Shan suppressing with his aura and suppressing his direct disciple at that, Bai Yuhai's face changed drastically. Whoosh. At the same time, an aura also extended from him, shattering the aura that had extended from Tong Shan. However, Tong Shan did not pay attention to these things now. He stared at Zuiyu with wide, copperbell-like eyes and asked in a deep voice, "Zuiyu, what happened to Lei Zhong?" Zuiyu took a deep breath. Although he was angry, when he looked at Tong Shan, he completely lost his temper. A martial emperor powerhouse was an insurmountable towering mountain for him. "Senior Tong Shan, your direct disciple Lei Jun was killed." Zuiyu said each word distinctly. Boom. Zuiyu's words were like a bolt from the blue, causing Tong Shan's face to change drastically. Who? Who is it?" Tong Shan moved, appearing in front of Zuiyu in a flash, reaching out to grab Zuiyu's shoulder, as if wanting to grab Zuiyu and force him to reveal who killed his direct disciple. Now, Tong Shan had completely lost the demeanor a martial emperor powerhouse should have. He was just an ordinary old man now. An ordinary old man filled with anger after hearing that his direct disciple, whom he regarded as a grandson, had been killed. Tong Shan. Just now, Bai Yuhai was also startled by Zuiyu's words, and when he regained his composure, he happened to see Tong Shan lunging towards Zuiyu, and immediately let out a furious roar. The next moment, he stood in Tong Shan's path. "Get out of the way." Seeing someone dare to obstruct him from questioning the murderer of his direct disciple, Tong Shan immediately became furious. In his irrational state, he didn't care who was blocking his way. He raised his hand, and a palm strike flashed out like lightning, causing continuous bursts of air explosions around him. As a martial emperor powerhouse, Tong Shan struck in anger, and the power of his palm, besides causing bursts of air explosions, even stirred up vast gusts of wind that swept through the entire valley in an instant. For a time, the flowers, grasses, and trees in the valley swayed violently. Bang! A loud bang echoed, as Bai Yuhai and Tong Shan exchanged a palm strike. The two martial emperor powerhouses clashed, and a terrifying force swept out, colliding with a deafening roar that shook the heart. The next moment, an invisible wave of air, centered on the point of their collision, swept out in all directions, transforming into a vast gale. For a moment, all the flowers, plants, and trees in the entire valley were uprooted, in a sorry state. Bai Yuhai and Tong Shan, two martial emperor powerhouses, were locked in a stalemate, their strengths evenly matched, neither yielding to the other. Tong Shan. At this moment, the old man in gray spoke. "You should listen carefully to what Zuiyu has to say." What's the use of being agitated now? Can it avenge your direct disciple? Upon hearing this, Tong Shan's agitated emotions temporarily subsided, and he separated from Bai Yuhai. Zuiyu, speak. Tong Shan took a deep breath, asking Zuiyu, who was protected behind Bai Yuhai. Seeing that Tong Shan had no intention of attacking him again, Zuiyu couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, then recounted some of his experiences, including the deaths of the Lei Zhong and Lei Jun brothers. When Tong Shan learned from Zuiyu that Lei Jun had also died, he became even more furious. Lei Jun was not only the biological younger brother of his direct disciple, Lei Zhong, but also the direct disciple of their Izumo sect's sect leader. Tong Shan had brought Lei Jun out, but now he had died inside the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. This time, after returning to the Izumo sect, he didn't know how he would explain it to the sect leader. Although, with his transcendent status in the Izumo sect, even the Izumo sect leader would be respectful when facing him. This time, even if Lei Jun died, the Izumo sect leader would not blame him. But he himself couldn't get past this hurdle in his heart. They were killed by the same person. Just as Tong Shan's rage reached its peak, Zuiyu spoke again, stating with a clang. Who? Hearing Zuiyu's words, Tong Shan's pupils constricted, his eyes bloodshot, and his voice was cold, as if emanating from an ice cellar. And Su Qing was also killed by that person. Zuiyu did not answer Tong Shan for the moment, but instead looked at the old man in gray standing by, who was Feng Tong, the Martial Emperor powerhouse of the Northern Underworld sect. As soon as Zuiyu finished speaking, Feng Tong could no longer remain calm. His face changed drastically, and his anger soared to the heavens. Who is that person? Su Qing, though not his direct disciple, was the disciple of his direct disciple, his grand disciple. His direct disciple was the current sect leader of the Northern Underworld sect. And now, his grand disciple had been killed? His name is Duan Ling Tian. Zuiyu, who had successfully enraged the two Martial Emperor powerhouses, had a cold glint in his eyes as he spoke each word. Duan Ling Tian, as long as you can survive and emerge from the Martial Emperor's secret treasure this time, you are doomed to die. Zuiyu secretly vowed in his heart. In his opinion, Duan Ling Tian, targeted by Martial Emperor powerhouses, would not be able to survive. He is someone who entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure from another entrance, a disciple of the Five Element sect, a third-rate force in the eastern region of our northern desert. Zuiyu revealed everything he knew, but did not mention Duan Ling Tian publicly announcing his departure from the Five Element sect. Five Element sect? Bai Yuhai, who was standing by, couldn't help but be surprised when he heard this. The Five Element sect, many years ago, had produced a young powerhouse with monstrous talent, and because of this, he had heard of the Five Element sect. Upon learning that the two most outstanding young disciples of the Izumo sect and Northern Underworld sect had been eliminated, he no longer blamed his direct disciple, Zuiyu, for not helping the Wuchang sect obtain the profound fragment. Listening to what Zuiyu had just said, he was lucky to have survived. At this moment, even though Bai Yuhai was a Martial Emperor powerhouse, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat for his disciple. Duan Ling Tian? Five Element sect? You killed my direct disciple. I, Tong Shan, will surely exterminate your entire clan. Tong Shan suddenly raised his head, looked up at the sky, and roared. Tong Shan's voice rolled out, and waves of vast sound soared into the sky, killing several unlucky birds that happened to be flying by, their corpses plummeting to the ground. Although Feng Tong did not roar hysterically like Tong Shan, a predatory cold light flickered in the depths of his eyes. His hatred for that Five-Element sect disciple, Duan Ling Tian, whom he had never met, was no less than Tong Shan's. Duan Ling Tian, of course, was unaware of what was happening outside entrance number 1. Duan Ling Tian also didn't know that he was now being targeted by two Martial Emperor powerhouses, both of whom, without exception, harbored the intent to kill him. Duan Ling Tian quickly returned to the vast platform at the end of the stone steps on the side of the high platform beneath entrance number 2. Black mist permeated the surroundings of the platform, concealing numerous illusion formations within. Duan Ling Tian stood on the platform, oblivious to the disciples of the Blade Sword sect, Cloud Sky Temple, and emotion-severing sect who passed by him, only showing a slight smile when disciples of the Five Element sect walked past. Senior Brother Ling Tian. Senior Brother Ling Tian. Although Duan Ling Tian had already announced his departure from the Five Element sect, the disciples of the Five Element sect still regarded Duan Ling Tian as their senior brother and as an idol. To, by his own strength, eliminate the top young powerhouse of a certain second-rate force. In the history of their Five Element sect, such a monstrous talent had never appeared. Duan Ling Tian waited quietly. Finally, the person he was waiting for appeared. A figure, like a fire spirit, was the first to appear before his eyes, Big Brother Duan. Tian Wu. Seeing the person, Duan Ling Tian responded with a smile. The person who came was none other than Feng Tian Wu. Feng Tian Wu's current strength far surpassed that of Huang Dinyo, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong, so Duan Ling Tian was not surprised that she was the first to emerge. Soon, Huang Dinyo, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong emerged one by one from the illusion formation and met up with Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tian Wu. Let's go. Since everyone was present, Duan Ling Tian and the other three did not linger there. They ascended the stone steps one by one, soaring towards the top of the high platform with lightning speed. Not long after, they reached the top of the high platform. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Soon, Duan Ling Tian and the other three used the high platform as a springboard, flying out of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure one by one, reappearing in the vast valley, which was outside entrance number 2. As soon as Duan Ling Tian and the other three appeared, they immediately became the focus of everyone's attention, especially Duan Ling Tian. More than 90% of the gazes were now on him. Duan Ling Tian is out. Among us who entered through entrance number 2, as far as I know, only Duan Ling Tian obtained a profound fragment. The Five Element sect is going to be lucky this time. Aside from the disciples of the Five Element sect, a group of disciples from the Blade Sword sect, Cloud Sky Temple, and emotion-severing sect couldn't help but murmur to themselves as they looked at Duan Ling Tian. Their voices were filled with envy, but none of them were jealous, because they knew that Duan Ling Tian was able to obtain that profound fragment and keep it entirely due to his own powerful strength. Otherwise, even if Duan Ling Tian had fortunately obtained the profound fragment, he wouldn't have been able to keep it in the end. Sect Leader, Peak Master. After Duan Ling Tian emerged, he was the first to fly out, arriving beside Guochong, the sect leader of the Five Element sect, and Qiyu, the Peak Master of the Wood Peak. With a raise of his hand, a fragment shimmering with purple true energy appeared out of thin air in his hand. It was the Triple Imperial Stage Thunder Profound Fragment. This Thunder Profound Fragment was the profound fragment Duan Ling Tian had obtained in the Sword Emperor's treasure vault. Ever since he acquired the 8 Imperial Stage Profound Fragment that Peng Bao exchanged with him, this profound fragment was dispensable to him. Therefore, he decided to give it to the Five Element sect, considering it a repayment for the Five Element sect's past nurturing grace. Good. Under the burning gazes of the high-ranking officials from other forces, Guochong took the profound fragment that Duan Ling Tian handed over, letting out a hearty laugh that came from the bottom of his heart, filled with delight. As a Void Realm Peak powerhouse, one of the 2 9th-level Void Transformation Profound concepts he comprehended happened to be the Thunder Profound concept. In other words, he could just happen to use this Thunder Profound fragment. With the help of this Thunder Profound fragment, it wouldn't take long for him to successfully comprehend the Thunder Profound concept and break through to the Martial Emperor realm in one fell swoop, becoming a Martial Emperor powerhouse. Congratulations, Sect Leader. Qi Feng was the first to congratulate Guochong. Congratulations, Sect Leader. At this time, the other 3 Peak Masters, including Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, also congratulated Guochong one by one. Congratulations, Sect Leader. Immediately after, the surviving disciples of the Five Element sect also followed suit, congratulating Guo Chong one by one. Duan Ling Tian, do you truly wish to leave the five-element sect? Soon, Guo Chong, as if he had obtained a great treasure, put away the thunder-profound fragment in his hand and looked at Duan Ling Tian with a solemn expression, asking. At this moment, everyone else remembered. While Duan Ling Tian obtained a profound fragment inside the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, he also caused a monstrous disaster that could be considered a catastrophe for their third-rate force. Duan Ling Tian had eliminated the two most outstanding young disciples of the second-rate force, Izumo sect, in the northern desert. Those two young disciples of the Izumo sect were undoubtedly the future pillars of their sect. Now, they had been killed by Duan Ling Tian. How could the Izumo sect not be enraged? Yes. Facing Guo Chong's question, Duan Ling Tian nodded in affirmation, not denying it. When he admitted to killing Lei Jun, and when he killed Lei Zhong, every young powerhouse present saw it clearly. Duan Ling Tian, why don't you reconsider? Perhaps we can think of another solution. Guo Chong said with a frown. To just let go of a great hero who had obtained a profound fragment for the sect and rendered great service, he felt he couldn't do it. I have a way. Chi Feng, who was standing by, spoke calmly. Just as everyone's gaze fell on Chi Feng, Duan Ling Tian said with a resolute expression, Sect leader, Peak Master. My decision is made. Let's put an end to this matter. Duan Ling Tian's words indicated his persistence. After all, he couldn't stay in the five-element sect his entire life. He had originally joined the five-element sect primarily to come to this Martial Emperor's secret treasure and reunite with Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong, not for any other reason. Now that his objective had been achieved, there was no need for him to remain in the five-element sect. This incident was just the opportunity for him to leave. Everyone has their own aspirations. Chi Yu, who was about to continue speaking, heard Duan Ling Tian's words and saw his resolute expression. His eyes flickered, and he nodded, respecting Duan Ling Tian's decision. Since you are determined to leave, our attempts to persuade you are futile. However, you must remember one thing. You, Duan Ling Tian, will always be a disciple of our five-element sect. The doors of the five-element sect will always be open for you. Guo Chong spoke earnestly to Duan Ling Tian, his words coming from the heart and full of sincerity. Thank you, sect leader. Hearing Guo Chong's words, Duan Ling Tian quickly expressed his gratitude. At the same time, he looked at Chi Yu and said via true energy condensation, Peak Master, I won't be returning to the five-element sect with you this time. Please take care of Yi Xian. If possible, I would like to ask you, Peak Master, to accept Yi Xian as your personal disciple. Of course, this is not out of consideration for me, but for Yi Xian's talent and comprehension. I believe, Peak Master, you would never let a pearl be covered in dust. Since he was already prepared to leave the five-element sect, Duan Ling Tian naturally wanted to make all the necessary arrangements. Yi Xian had followed him to the wood peak of the five-element sect. This time, if he were to leave without saying goodbye, he had to give her an explanation, at least ensuring she had a backer in the five-element sect so no one would bully her. Of course, he believed that given time, Yi Xian would surely become the rising star of the five-element sect, standing out among the young disciples of the five-element sect. If she is truly as outstanding as you say, I will consider it. Chi Yu's reply was simple and direct. Thank you, Peak Master. Receiving Chi Yu's promise, Duan Ling Tian breathed a sigh of relief. As for Yi Xian's talent and comprehension, he was very confident. Next, Duan Ling Tian looked at Huang Dinyo, whose expression was somewhat grim and whose large, copper gong-like eyes were filled with reluctance. He smiled slightly and said, Dinyo, there's no feast that doesn't end. You don't have to be like this. When you go back this time, remember to say goodbye to Xiao Xian for me, and tell her I'll come back to see her when I have time. Huang Dinyo nodded heavily. I'll take good care of Xiao Xian. I won't let anyone bully her. Duan Ling Tian didn't pay much attention to Huang Dinyo's words. Because he knew that with Yi Xian's talent and comprehension, she would certainly be accepted as a personal disciple by Chi Yu, the Wood Peak Master. Once Yi Xian became Chi Yu's personal disciple, and entered his tutelage. Who in the five-element sect would dare to provoke her? The current Qi Yu was no longer the same as before. Since Qi Yu had displayed his void transformation peak strength, his status in the five-element sect was destined to rise, catching up to the sect leader, Guocheng. Next, before Duan Ling Tian left, he also bid farewell to Yu Feng, the Water Peak Master, and Tian Gu, the Earth Peak Master. As for Cha Bai, the Fire Peak Master, he completely ignored him. Duan Ling Tian. Cha Bai endured for a long time, but finally couldn't hold back and spoke in a deep voice. You are a great contributor to our five-element sect. I, Cha Bai, admit that. But why did you kill my personal disciple, Hu Fei? After leaving the five-element sect this time, Hu Fei didn't actively provoke you again, did he? Apparently, Cha Bai had already learned from some five-element sect disciples that his personal disciple, Hu Fei, had been killed by Duan Ling Tian, and he was now holding Duan Ling Tian accountable. However, Duan Ling Tian seemed not to have heard Cha Bai's words at all, ignoring him. He was too lazy to explain. Hu Fei hadn't actively provoked him again. Just thinking about it, he found it laughable. Before entering the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, Hu Fei had even used true energy condensation to tip off Qin Feng, the leader of the Sun Moon sect. He said that his strength far surpassed that of Lu Kai, a disciple of the Sun Moon sect, and warned Qin Feng not to accept his bet. It was fortunate that Qin Feng didn't believe him. Otherwise, the two ninefold profound fragment in Qin Feng's hands would certainly not have become his. It was precisely because of that incident that he directly killed Hu Fei shortly after entering the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. In his opinion, if Hu Fei didn't die, he would eventually become a great disaster. Zishang was undoubtedly a lesson from the past, and he didn't want a second Zishang to appear. Of course, this wasn't because he was afraid, but because he didn't want to waste so much time and energy dealing with those schemes from the shadows. Seeing Duan Ling Tian completely ignore him, Cha Bai's face grew even gloomier. Although he had long decided not to hold a grudge against Duan Ling Tian, that was before Duan Ling Tian killed his personal disciple, Hu Fei. After learning that Hu Fei had been killed by Duan Ling Tian, his reservations about Duan Ling Tian vanished completely. He wished he could kill Duan Ling Tian with his own hands right now to avenge Hu Fei. He had only one personal disciple in his life, and he regarded him as his successor. But now, his personal disciple, his successor, had been destroyed by Duan Ling Tian. Sect leader. Cha Bai took a deep breath, his eyes bloodshot as he looked at Guocheng, wanting Guocheng, the sect leader of the five-element sect, to uphold justice for his personal disciple, Hu Fei. However, when he saw that Guocheng had no intention of responding to him, he knew that Guocheng had no intention of interfering in this matter. It made sense. No matter what, Duan Ling Tian had obtained an profundity fragment for the five-element sect and was a great contributor. In front of an profundity fragment, the life of his personal disciple, Hu Fei, was insignificant. For a moment, Cha Bai swallowed the words he was about to say. His gaze then shifted back to Duan Ling Tian, filled with coldness and malice. Duan Ling Tian immediately noticed Cha Bai's sinister gaze. He couldn't help but frown, thinking to himself, this Cha Bai, like his personal disciple Hu Fei, will eventually become a menace if left alive. It's just a pity that I can't cut him off at the roots. Indeed, not to mention that Cha Bai was the Fire Peak Master of the Five-Element sect, with astonishing strength that he, at present, couldn't match, even if his strength surpassed Cha Bai's. Unless Cha Bai truly did something in secret that nearly killed him, Guocheng, the sect leader of the Five-Element sect, would absolutely not stand by and do nothing. Cha Bai, after all, was the Fire Peak Master. In terms of identity, status, and influence, he was incomparable to his personal disciple, Hu Fei. At this moment, Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong, who were with the group from the Blade and Sword sect, had already handed over their spatial rings one by one for the Blade and Sword sect's higher-ups to inspect. Although Feng Tianwu had obtained a ninefold Emperor Realm Fire Profundity Fragment in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, that Profundity Fragment had already integrated into her body. Not only could the higher-ups of the Blade and Sword sect not discover it, but even if they could, they wouldn't be able to restore that ninefold Emperor Realm Profundity fragment to its original state for their use. As for Su Li and Zhang Shouyong, they did not obtain any Profundity fragments. After the verification was complete, the higher-ups of the Blade and Sword sect were somewhat disappointed. Duan Ling Tian, especially the Sword sect master, whose gaze towards Duan Ling Tian now clearly contained a hint of bitterness. It's all because of Kangwolf Castle. If it weren't for them, Duan Ling Tian would already be a disciple of our Blade and Sword sect, and the Profundity fragment he obtained would have been handed over to our Blade and Sword sect, not the Five-Element sect. Dao Wu, the vice sect master of the Blade sect, said through gritted teeth, his gaze fixed on the 5 isolated vice castle masters of Kangwolf Castle. I curse all 20 of Kangwolf Castle's disciples to be wiped out. Dao Wu then added. Hearing Dao Wu's words, not only Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong, but also the surviving disciples of the Blade and Sword sect, had somewhat strange expressions. Of the 20 disciples of Kangwolf Castle, one fell into the bottomless abyss while trying to kill Duan Ling Tian. The other 19 disciples, coveting the 4 ninefold profound fragments in Duan Ling Tian's hands, attacked Duan Ling Tian as soon as they entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, and as a result, they were all counter-killed. 2 sect masters. I plan to leave with Brother Ling Tian and return to our hometown, the Han Dynasty. Zhang Shouyong was the first to speak to the 2 sect masters of the Blade and Sword sect. Duan Ling Tian had told him about this before they came out. The 2 sect masters of the Blade and Sword sect nodded in agreement. Originally, with Zhang Shouyong's talent and comprehension, he would barely catch their eye. But because Zhang Shouyong had joined the Blade and Sword sect with Feng Tianwu, they knew a little about Zhang Shouyong, knowing that he came from the Han Dynasty and had a family there. Sect Master, I will also be leaving with Big Brother Duan this time. At this moment, Feng Tianwu followed up. Before she finished speaking, she looked at Jian Shisan, the Vice Sect Master of the Sword Sect. Vice Sect Master, please convey to my father that Big Brother Duan and I have returned to the Han Dynasty. Jian Shisan nodded. We 2 old fellows have no objection to you returning to your hometown. However, we are worried about you 3 young people traveling such a long distance back. The Sword Sect Master frowned. How about I let Shisan go with you? The Shisan in the Sword Sect Master's mouth was naturally Jian Shisan, the Vice Sect Master of the Sword Sect, and also Su Li's master. To have Jian Shisan, the Vice Sect Master of the Sword Sect, personally escort them, showed the status of Feng Tianwu, a disciple of the Sword Sect, in the Sword Sect Master's heart. Thank you for your kindness, Sect Master, but I think there's no need to trouble the Vice Sect Master. Feng Tianwu refused the Sword Sect Master's kind offer. Before leaving the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, when she decided to return to the Han Dynasty with Duan Ling Tian, she had also worried about this. With my current strength, returning to the Han Dynasty along the way, I am fully capable of protecting you all. These were the words Duan Ling Tian had said to her and Zhang Shouyong at the time. She could hear the confidence from the depths of his bones in Duan Ling Tian's tone. Since meeting Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tianwu had always trusted him unconditionally. This time, as always, she didn't doubt Duan Ling Tian's words in the slightest, nor did she doubt whether Duan Ling Tian possessed that kind of strength. In her eyes, her brother Duan was the most outstanding man in this world, unrivaled. Let's go. Duan Ling Tian looked at Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyong, greeted them, and then flew off into the distance under the gaze of many people present. The group from the 5 Elements sect, from sect leader Gua Chong downwards, all watched Duan Ling Tian depart. Duan Ling Tian. Chi Yu gazed at the distant purple figure and murmured, I wonder if I'll ever have the chance to see you again in the future. If I do, to what extent will you have grown? As he continued to murmur, Chi Yu's eyes filled with anticipation. He believed that if he had another chance to see Duan Ling Tian in this life, Duan Ling Tian would surely bring him a great surprise. Having witnessed Duan Ling Tian's talent and comprehension, He was very confident in this. I hope you can live well. Soon, Chi remembered the conflict between Duan Ling Tian and the second-rate force, Chun sect, from the northern desert, and his heart tightened slightly before relaxing again. Duan Ling Tian is a rational person. Since he dared to openly kill Lei Zhong, the top young talent of the Chun sect, he must have a plan in mind. As long as he intends to hide and stay away from the northern desert, the Chun sect might not be able to find him. Chiyu thought to himself, if Chiyu knew that Duan Ling Tian was currently being targeted not only by the Chun sect, but also by the second-rate forces Wuchang sect and Baiming sect from the northern desert, he probably wouldn't be so optimistic. Duan Ling Tian. Fire Peak Master Cha Bai watched Duan Ling Tian leave, his face filled with gloom, and in the depths of his eyes, there was a palpable hatred, as if he wanted to devour someone. At the same time, Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyong followed Duan Ling Tian. They flew off into the distance and quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. As time passed, two more figures flew out of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Its senior brother Chen and senior brother Yi. Some 5 Elements sect disciples immediately recognized the two. Nangong Chen, Nangong Yi. They were the two personal disciples of their 5 Elements sect leader. Originally, when two figures were spotted flying out of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure before their faces were clearly seen, the high-ranking members of Kangwolf Fort and Sun Moon sect were somewhat expectant. When they saw the faces of the two, they were greatly disappointed. What's going on? Why haven't any of our Kangwolf Fort disciples emerged from the Martial Emperor's secret treasure yet? Where's Zishang? The 5 deputy fort masters of Kangwolf Fort could no longer maintain their composure, vaguely realizing that something was amiss. The high-ranking members of the Sun Moon sect, from sect leader Chen Feng downwards, also had rather unpleasant expressions. 19 people from their Sun Moon sect had entered, and not a single one had emerged yet. For a moment, they vaguely felt that something bad had happened. Those deputy fort masters from Kangwolf Fort are still waiting for their Kangwolf Fort disciples to come out. The commotion of the 5 Kangwolf Fort deputy fort masters alarmed many disciples from the 5 Elements sect, Sword Dao sect, Cloud Sky Temple, and Emotion Severing sect, causing them to show strange expressions. It seems they still don't know about the complete annihilation of the 20 Kangwolf Fort disciples who went in. As long as none of us actively tell them, it's not surprising that they don't know. The disciples of the 4 major forces whispered among themselves, their voices not loud, but clearly reaching the ears of the 5 Kangwolf Fort deputy fort masters, causing all 5 of their expressions to change. Their Kangwolf Fort disciples, after entering the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, were all annihilated? What exactly happened? Immediately, the 5 of them looked extremely grim. Following this, after learning the full story from some disciples of the 4 major forces, their faces turned dark, and their eyes revealed a hint of helplessness. Zishang, failing to kill Duan Ling Tian, fell into the bottomless abyss himself. He was as good as dead. As for the other 19, coveting the 9-fold intent fragment in Duan Ling Tian's hands, they teamed up with disciples from the Sun Moon sect and Emotion Severing sect to attack Duan Ling Tian, intending to kill him and seize his treasures. Who would have thought that 48 people attacking Duan Ling Tian would result in such a dramatic outcome? With just one sword strike, Duan Ling Tian wiped out most of the disciples from the 3 major forces. Those who weren't killed were crippled. Another sword strike, total annihilation. Duan Ling Tian, why him? If it had been anyone else, the 5 Kangwolf Fort deputy fort masters would have long since chased after the direction the person left in and killed them. But this person happened to be Duan Ling Tian. He was the brother Ling Tian in the little demonist's mouth. Unless they could kill Duan Ling Tian flawlessly, leaving no trace. Otherwise, the consequences would be beyond their ability to bear. So, even though they were angry now, they could only swallow their anger. However, while the 5 Kangwolf Fort deputy fort masters could endure it, the high-ranking members of the Sun Moon sect could not. Upon hearing that 17 of their Sun Moon sect disciples had died at Duan Ling Tian's hands, their expressions changed drastically, and their eyes gleamed with furious coldness, as if they wanted to devour someone. Duan Ling Tian, You killed my Sun Moon sect disciples. I want you dead. Chen Feng roared and was about to lead the high-ranking members of the Sun Moon sect to pursue Duan Ling Tian, kill him, and avenge their 17 Sun Moon sect disciples. Sect leader Chen Feng, if you dare to leave, when the two most outstanding young talents of your Sun Moon sect emerge, they will surely die. A cold voice came from the mouth of Guochong, the sect leader of the Five Elements sect, filled with indifference. Those two Sun Moon sect disciples are among the top young talents of your Sun Moon sect, so it's very likely they've also obtained profundity fragments. Chi Yu stood to the side, looking at the high-ranking members of the Sun Moon sect, and calmly added. Chi Yu's meaning was simple. If you dare to chase Duan Ling Tian, when your two most outstanding Sun Moon sect disciples emerge, our Five Elements sect will not only kill them, but also take any profundity fragments they might have obtained. Swish, swish, swish. It must be said that Guochong and Chi Yu's threat was very effective. As soon as their words fell, from Chen Feng, the sect leader of the Sun Moon sect, downwards, all the high-ranking members of the Sun Moon sect changed their expressions. As their expressions changed drastically, they glared angrily at Guochong and Chi Yu, but they dared not make any further moves. Although 17 of their Sun Moon sect disciples had died, and they were very angry. In their opinion, the lives of those 17 disciples were far less valuable than the two remaining disciples. Those two disciples were the future pillars of their Sun Moon sect. Moreover, as Chi Yu said, the two most outstanding young talents of their Sun Moon sect had very likely obtained profundity fragments in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Guochong, you're ruthless. Chen Feng glared at Guochong, gritting his teeth and saying, Sect leader Chen Feng, you flatter me. Guochong smiled faintly. Seeing the high-ranking members of the Sun Moon sect, under the threat of Guochong and Chi Yu, not daring to pursue and kill Duan Ling Tian, Zhang Yin, who stood not far away, twitched his mouth slightly. Among those present, perhaps only he knew that those two Sun Moon sect disciples had already died inside the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, simply because they were killed by him. Of course, he wouldn't be so foolish as to reveal this fact. Although he didn't think that the emotion-severing sect behind him would fear this Sun Moon sect, he still didn't want to stir up trouble and didn't want his actions to affect the sect that cultivated him. Humph. The 5 Kangwolf Fort deputy fort masters snorted, their robes fluttering, and prepared to return to Kangwolf Fort. However, as soon as they moved, they were stopped by a ghostly figure. Sect leader of the 5 Elements sect, Guochong. Sect leader Gua, what is the meaning of this? Luo Fu, the leader of the 5 Kangwolf Fort deputy fort masters, seeing Guochong blocking them, his face darkened. Deputy Fort Master Luo, I don't mean anything. I just want to remind you all that if you dare to attack Duan Ling Tian, the day I achieve the Martial Emperor realm will be the day your Kangwolf Fort is annihilated. Guochong's voice was firm and unquestionable. You. Immediately, Luo Fu's expression changed drastically, and the other 4 Kangwolf Fort deputy fort masters also changed their expressions in unison. They knew in their hearts that Guochong was not joking with them. Guochong, having obtained the Thunder Profundity Fragment, would probably break through to the Martial Emperor realm in no time. By then, the 5 Elements sect would instantly be promoted to a new second-rate force in the Northern Desert. Once Guochong achieved the Martial Emperor realm, even the second-rate force, Chuyin sect, would have to seriously reconsider if they wanted to do anything to the 5 Elements sect. Sect leader Gua, rest assured, we are just returning to Kangwolf Fort. We have no intention of dealing with Duan Ling Tian. As for those useless disciples of our Kangwolf Fort, they deserve to die. Without strength, they dared to engage in killing and seizing treasures. After Luo Fu said this in a deep voice, he ignored Guochong and led the other 4 Kangwolf Fort deputy fort masters, flying towards the direction of Great Desert Ancient City, where Kangwolf Fort was located. In fact, even without Guochong's threat, they wouldn't dare to do anything to Duan Ling Tian. That little demoness, even their Kangwolf Fort master had to be wary of her, and even willingly acted as her mount. Her background was terrifyingly powerful, as one could imagine. Sect leader Chen Feng, I believe you are also a smart person. At this moment, Guocheng looked at Sun Moon sect leader Chen Feng again, his tone calm, but containing a hidden threat and killing intent. Chen Feng's expression changed drastically upon hearing this, but he dared not show his anger. Duan Ling Tian, who had already left, naturally knew nothing about what happened outside the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's second entrance. Brother Zhang, when we return this time, perhaps I can help sister-in-law repair her dantian. Duan Ling Tian looked at Zhang Shouyong, who was walking beside him, and said with a smile, "Boom." Duan Ling Tian's words were like a bolt from the blue, causing Zhang Shouyong's expression to change, and his body suddenly stopped in midair. Ling, brother Ling Tian, are you telling the truth? Zhang Shouyong looked at Duan Ling Tian, who had also stopped with him, and asked excitedly. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendation tickets and monthly tickets. Your support is my biggest motivation. Of course, it's true. Duan Ling Tian smiled faintly, raised his hand, took out the immortal spirit grass he had obtained from the Martial Emperor's secret treasury, casually plucked a leaf from it, and handed it to Zhang Shouyong. This is... Looking at the strange, green glowing grass leaf that Duan Ling Tian handed him, Zhang Shouyong looked puzzled. Although he had considered that this leaf might be the very thing that could restore his wife Wang Qiong's dantian, he found it hard to believe, because it was simply too incredible. One of the 3 leaves from a strange plant could help his wife restore her dantian? Was this even possible? This is what can help sister-in-law restore her dantian. Duan Ling Tian said with a smile, Brother Zhang, don't underestimate this single leaf. This one leaf alone possesses the powerful effect of bringing the dead back to life and regenerating flesh from bones. Even someone with a missing limb, once they consume this leaf, can regrow their limb. What? Duan Ling Tian's words made Zhang Shouyong's expression change. When he looked at the green glowing leaf in his hand again, his eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. This leaf can bring the dead back to life and regenerate flesh from bones. People with missing limbs can regrow them after consuming it? At this moment, even Feng Tianwu, who was standing on Duan Ling Tian's other side and had stopped with him, was startled, her pretty face showing emotion. Although, in her eyes, her brother Duan had always been a creator of miracles. But when she heard that the leaf in Zhang Shouyong's hand had such terrifying medicinal effects, she couldn't help but be shocked. Ling, brother Ling Tian, what kind of herb is this? Zhang Shouyong's breathing was rapid, his chest heaving like a bellows, and after a long while, he finally recovered, looking at Duan Ling Tian with burning eyes and asking. Zhang Shouyong still deeply believed Duan Ling Tian's words. But he couldn't help but be shocked, wondering what kind of herb could have such powerful and terrifying medicinal effects. It's called immortal spirit grass, and throughout the entire Cloud Continent, it's considered a legendary existence. I never expected to encounter it in the Qingfeng Palace. Duan Ling Tian said with a smile. Immortal spirit grass? Zhang Shouyong and Feng Tianwu's eyes lit up upon hearing this. Just by the ethereal name of this herb, one could tell that it was no ordinary herb. You managed to obtain a legendary herb. Your luck is simply heaven-defying. Zhang Shouyong couldn't help but exclaim. At this moment, deep in Zhang Shouyong's eyes, there was a hint of excitement. His wife, Wang Qiong, had been unable to cultivate for years due to her dantian, which had become a constant worry for him. And now, his wife had the opportunity to restore her dantian and officially begin cultivating, which filled him with excitement from the bottom of his heart. The worry that had plagued him for years could finally be removed. Brother Ling Tian, thank you. Zhang Shouyong sincerely thanked Duan Ling Tian. He was deeply grateful that Duan Ling Tian would share such a precious herb with him. Brother Zhang, do we still need to be so polite between us? Back in the Tianhuang ancient city of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, if you hadn't lent a hand, I would have died long ago, let alone be where I am today. Duan Ling Tian shook his head and said, Brother Ling Tian, that's all in the past. For me, it was just a small favor, not worth mentioning. Zhang Shouyong said, Brother Zhang, in your eyes, it might just be something not worth mentioning, but in my eyes, you saved my life. Even a drop of kindness should be repaid with a gushing spring, let alone a life-saving grace. Duan Ling Tian said with a serious expression. Back then, if Zhang Shouyong hadn't lent a hand and saved his life, he would have been killed long ago, let alone achieved what he had today. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Seeing Duan Ling Tian become serious, Zhang Shouyong changed the subject. Brother Ling Tian, are you returning to the Daihan dynasty this time to help Xiong Quan restore his Dantian with the immortal spirit grass? Xiong Quan, the middle-aged man who followed Duan Ling Tian back then, left a deep impression on Zhang Shouyong. Back then, Xiong Quan's Dantian was crippled in their Cheongyong wine house. Yes. Duan Ling Tian nodded, a glint in his eyes. Back then, he was crippled because of me. That was my responsibility. This time, being able to help him restore his Dantian can be considered giving him an explanation. He always felt guilty towards Xiong Quan. Brother Ling Tian, don't think too much. I could tell back then that Xiong Quan never blamed you. Moreover, Xiong Quan has an open mind, and even without his vital energy, he must have lived well all these years. Zhang Shouyong comforted him. Duan Ling Tian nodded. He also hoped it was so. With a lift of his hand, Duan Ling Tian put the immortal spirit grass in his hand back into his spatial ring. The immortal spirit grass he held originally had 3 leaves. He gave one to Zhang Shouyong, leaving only 2 now. As Zhang Shouyong carefully put the immortal spirit grass leaf into his spatial ring, as if it were a priceless treasure, the 3 of them continued their journey towards the Daihan dynasty, moving at an extremely fast pace. Brother Ling Tian, which floor of the Qingfeng Palace did you obtain that immortal spirit grass from? On the way, Zhang Shouyong asked curiously. He was very curious about where Duan Ling Tian had obtained such a legendary herb as the immortal spirit grass. Feng Tianwu also looked at Duan Ling Tian curiously upon hearing this. The first floor. Duan Ling Tian said. After I reached the first floor, I appeared at the end of a long corridor. Along the way, I could enter many stone chambers, but as soon as you entered, the statues outside would attack you. And once you left the stone chamber, the statues would return to their original positions and stop attacking. Duan Ling Tian learned this last point from Huang Danian. On the first floor of the Qingfeng Palace, whenever he entered a stone chamber, the statues that followed him in to attack him were all destroyed by him, without exception. Therefore, he himself didn't know that the statues would return to their original positions after leaving the stone chamber. That's the same, Zhang Shouyong said. Feng Tianwu also nodded. Her experience was similar. The immortal spirit grass was obtained by me in the central stone chamber at the end of the long corridor on the first floor of the Qingfeng Palace, which leads to the second floor. As long as your strength can overpower the other 3 young, strong individuals assigned with you, you can enter it and ascend to the second floor of the Qingfeng Palace. Duan Ling Tian said. He still remembered that stone chamber was also called the 4-into-1 stone chamber. Then I didn't enter there. One of the people assigned with me was a disciple of the Northern Underworld sect. Zhang Shouyong smiled bitterly. His talent and strength might be considered good among third-rate forces. But once placed among a second-rate force like the Northern Underworld sect, he could only be considered average. And the Northern Underworld sect disciples who entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasury were almost all the top young talents of their generation in the Northern Underworld sect, far beyond what he could compare to. I entered that stone chamber. However, I didn't see any immortal spirit grass. What I got was a first-grade spirit weapon that could increase power by 89%. Feng Tianwu said. A first-grade spirit weapon that increased power by 89% was considered a supreme grade among first-grade spirit weapons, only slightly inferior to the first-grade spirit weapons that Duan Ling Tian could now refine. Duan Ling Tian was not surprised to hear Feng Tianwu's words. The immortal spirit grass, after all, was a legendary herb, and it was impossible for it to appear in every 4-into-1 stone chamber. He had already guessed this point. He was able to obtain the immortal spirit grass entirely because of his good luck. Tianwu, what did you experience after you went up to the second floor? Next, Duan Ling Tian asked again. Soon, From Feng Tianwu's mouth, Duan Ling Tian learned about Feng Tianwu's experience of breaking through the Qingfeng Palace all the way up, only missing the giant wooden puppet on the second floor. Or rather, the second floor where Feng Tianwu was located did not have that strange stone platform engraved with a mysterious inscription array that could combine with the broken wood in the corridor to form a giant wooden puppet. It seems, just like the immortal spirit grass, that strange stone platform is also unique. Of course, it's also possible that Tianwu didn't activate the inscription array within the stone platform she encountered on the second floor. Duan Ling Tian's heart stirred, and he secretly speculated. As for the rest, it's all pretty similar. On the fourth floor's rugged path, facing the power of the earth comparable to the strength of 1,500 ancient horned dragons, because Tianwu didn't forcefully activate the profound truth of fire. She could only retreat in the face of difficulty. All of this was roughly what he had guessed. As Duan Ling Tian and the other two continued their journey towards the Dahan dynasty. Boom, 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 boom. In a remote mountain range of the Dahan dynasty, within a dark cave, a series of loud noises suddenly erupted, causing the mountains to tremble violently, as if the earth was shaking. After a series of tremors, an old man enveloped in black mist shot out from the cave. The old man had a pair of blood-red eyes, devoid of any emotion. Suddenly, the old man raised his hands, clutching his head tightly, and at the same time, he bent over, crying out in pain. The old man's voice was heart-wrenching, as if he was enduring some kind of torture. I am Zhao Ming. I am Zhao Ming. Yes, I am Zhao Ming. 7-star sword sect. Azure Forest 3 sects. Duan Ling Tian. Yes, it's Duan Ling Tian. He is my enemy. He is my enemy. I want to kill him. I want to kill him. Finally, the old man stopped screaming, and his body straightened again, his blood-red eyes filled with killing intent, yet also looking around somewhat blankly. Where is this place? The old man frowned, trying to recall, but found that he couldn't remember anything. Duan Ling Tian. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Soon, the old man stopped thinking, his face grim, roaring hysterically. As the old man roared, his tone was filled with hatred and brutality. As the old man roared, the black mist swirling around his body churned like boiling water, completely frothing. In an instant, the air currents in the surroundings were completely squeezed together, creating bursts of thunderous air explosions. Not only that, but as the air explosions sounded, invisible waves of air swept out, turning into vast gales that blew in all directions. Immediately, with the old man at the center, the vegetation in the nearby mountains shook, and birds that had been resting on the trees were startled and flew up, disappearing into the high sky. Whoosh! At some point, a black figure appeared above the mountains. This half-finished product seems pretty good. However, he still lacks a bit for me to completely control him, given his obsession with hatred in his heart. The owner of the black figure muttered, seemingly a little dissatisfied. For now, I can only let him seek his revenge. Once he gets his revenge, his obsession will naturally disappear. At that time, I will be able to completely suppress his will, turn him into a true, walking corpse, and then fully control him. However, in his current state, waking up from time to time, it might take some time to find his enemy. Whoosh! The black-clad figure appeared out of thin air and then disappeared out of thin air, as if it had never been there. At the same time, below, within the mountains, the old man standing in the air, who was Zhao Ming, was completely stunned. At this moment, he was looking up at the void above his head, his face filled with a dazed expression, and his eyes showed an incredible look. How is this possible? Above the void, after the disturbance of the power of heaven and earth, a celestial phenomenon gathered. Ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared, vast and winding, descending before Zhao Ming's eyes, constantly impacting his vision and giving him an immense shock. The celestial phenomenon before him, at a rough glance, contained at least 7,000 or 8,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. The power of 7,000 or 8,000 ancient horned dragons. Is this my power? At this moment, Zhao Ming felt the surging power within his body, his eyes filled with shock, and at the same time, his face couldn't help but be covered with pleasant surprise. The power he now possessed was hundreds of times stronger than before. No, my power doesn't seem to be origin energy anymore, and I seem unable to connect with concept. What exactly is going on? Soon, as Zhao Ming raised his hand, a jet black power appeared in his hand, constantly swirling, and faint black chi flickered around it. This power, it's not origin energy, nor is it concept, but it seems to be stronger than origin energy and concept combined. What exactly is this power? As Zhao Ming muttered to himself, he casually raised his hand and struck out with a palm. Immediately, the jet black power in his hand instantly transformed into a giant palm print entwined with black mist, roaring out and disappearing before his eyes in a flash. Boom! A loud bang came, and broken stones flew. The mountain wall not far away was blasted by Zhao Ming's palm, creating a bottomless giant pit. Even Zhao Ming was startled by the power of his own palm, staring blankly at his hand for a long time. Is this my power? Is this still me? Zhao Ming was stunned, completely stunned. No, I remember, I think Duan Lingtian crippled my cultivation, and he also crippled my limbs. What exactly is going on? Zhao Ming's eyes were filled with confusion, and he kept shaking his head. He couldn't figure out this point. Could all of this just be a dream? If it's a dream, why is it so real? And why am I here? Why do I possess this strange power? Zhao Ming was at a loss, and at the same time, he began to recall things. Soon, perhaps due to the memories, a sharp pain came from the depths of Zhao Ming's mind, causing him to scream hysterically again. A moment later, the screaming stopped. Zhao Ming's bloodshot eyes completely dimmed at this moment, as if they had lost their luster. At this moment, Zhao Ming seemed like a different person, exuding an extremely cold aura all over his body, his eyes vacant, like a complete walking corpse. Whoosh! Zhao Ming moved, flying out of this secluded mountainous area, wandering without any direction and seemingly without any destination. Outside the imperial city of the Han Dynasty, 3 figures swept through the air and stopped high above. Brother Lingtian, Miss Tianwu, are you really not coming back to the Zhang family mansion with me? Zhang Shouyong looked at the purple-clad youth and the red-clad woman before him and asked. The latter were precisely Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu, who had returned to the Han Dynasty with Zhang Shouyong. Even with having to consider Zhang Shouyong's speed, Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu did not take too long to return to the Han Dynasty. Brother Zhang, you should go back and spend time with your wife first. As for us too, you don't need to worry. Are you perhaps worried that we'll encounter danger in the Han Dynasty? Duan Lingtian shook his head with a smile. That's not it. I just feel that Xiong'er's Dantian was repaired with your help, and my wife and I must thank you properly together, no matter what. Zhang Shouyong said earnestly. Brother Zhang, there's no need to be so polite with me. We'll be going now. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he had already moved to leave. A red figure, like a fire spirit, followed Duan Lingtian like a shadow, disappearing with him before Zhang Shouyong's eyes, making Zhang Shouyong shake his head and smile bitterly. Brother Lingtian and Miss Tianwu are truly a perfect match, both so spirited and fiery. Shaking his head with a smile, Zhang Shouyong turned and flew towards the imperial city until he reached above a spacious mansion, where he descended, his movements as smooth as flowing clouds in water. Zhang family mansion. Xiong'er. After Zhang Shouyong landed, he ignored the startled gazes of the surrounding maids and excitedly rushed into a large courtyard. This was precisely where he and his wife, Wang Qiong, used to reside. On the other side, Brother Duan, are you planning to find Xiong Quan? Feng Tianwu followed beside Duan Lingtian and asked curiously. Xiong Quan can wait for now. We'll follow the closest principle and go to Kongming City first. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as he spoke. Kongming City. Feng Tianwu nodded. Although she didn't know why Duan Lingtian was going there, she was sensible enough not to ask, because she knew that Duan Lingtian must have a reason for going there. Just as Feng Tianwu thought, Duan Lingtian did indeed have a reason for going there. He was going to Kongming City for one person. Hu Li. Hu Li. This name, even for the current Duan Lingtian, felt a bit distant. But he could never forget this name. He still remembered that when he had just joined the Seven-Star Sword sect, not long after, he entered the primeval forest behind the Seven-Star Sword sect to test his vibrating force, and happened to encounter a small team composed of Seven-Star Sword sect disciples. The small team consisted of 3 people: Hu Li, Shirlan, Xiao Fei. Xiao Fei, a malicious person, tried to harm him multiple times in the primeval forest, but never succeeded. In the end, he was severely injured by him and almost killed. However, due to Hu Li and Shirlan's pleas, Xiao Fei was spared. However, all of that was just the beginning of a disaster. Xiao Fei later sought help from his brother to avenge him, forcing Shirlan to fall off a cliff to her death and crippling one of Hu Li's legs. Later, although he killed Xiao Fei and his brother, avenging Shirlan and Hu Li, Shirlan's life could not be saved, and neither could Hu Li's leg. However, now that he had obtained the immortal spirit grass, he could help Hu Li heal his leg. He still remembered that after Hu Li left, he had someone tell him that his family was in the Hu clan in Kongming City. Kongming City, a city that was neither big nor small. After asking for directions several times, Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu arrived at this unfamiliar city. For the two of them, who had left the Han Dynasty and seen the wider world outside the domain, Kongming City could only be considered a small, even tiny city. Upon arriving in Kongming City, Duan Lingtian asked for the location of the Hu clan and then took Feng Tianwu with him. Hu Li? Are you referring to young Master Li? That's quite a coincidence. A few months ago, young Master Li, after learning that the Seven-Star Sword sect had been rebuilt, returned to the Seven-Star Sword sect, saying he wanted to contribute to the Seven-Star Sword sect. At the main entrance of the Hu family mansion, Duan Lingtian learned of Hu Li's whereabouts from a Hu family disciple. He hadn't expected Hu Li to have returned to the Seven-Star Sword sect. Since the two guests know young Master Li, are you perhaps young Master Li's friends? The Hu family disciple asked further. That's right. Duan Lingtian nodded. Since the two of you are young Master Li's friends, you are welcome to rest at our Hu family mansion for a few days. Once I report to the Patriarch will surely send someone to the Seven-Star Sword sect to notify young Master Li. The Hu family disciple added. No need. We'll go to the Seven-Star Sword sect to find him ourselves. Duan Lingtian shook his head, then left Kongming City with Feng Tianwu and headed for the Seven-Star Sword sect. Upon arriving at the Seven-Star Sword sect, everything before Duan Lingtian's eyes greatly surprised him. The Seven-Star Sword sect, compared to before he left last time, had undergone earth-shattering changes, and everything seemed to have returned to its former prosperity. This kid Mo, you really did a good job. Looking at the scene before him, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but secretly praise. This time, Duan Lingtian returned without alarming anyone else. After greeting Feng Tianwu, he changed into the inner disciple attire he used to wear in the Seven-Star Sword sect, and then entered the Seven-Star Sword sect's main peak, Tianshu Peak. Senior brother, do you know where senior brother Hu Li is? After entering Tianshu Peak, Duan Lingtian found an inner disciple, who was about 30 years old, and asked, You must have just joined our Seven-Star Sword sect, right? The inner disciple looked Duan Lingtian up and down like he was looking at a greenhorn.